Hello, my name is Osha. I like to talk about American presidents, and as I discuss American presidents, of course, I get to discuss laws and policies affecting us all as Americans, and of course those who aspire to be American citizens as well. And it provides a lens for, I guess, other people, international people. I once was an international. I'm an American citizen now, of course. Um, I'm naturalized, and so I'm an American citizen now. And so, people can get a lens to analyze, how America continues to be a work in progress. In our Constitution, it says that the American people desire to aim for a more perfect union. So we're still a work in progress. Today, I wanted to discuss, um, something I had come across and read of, and that's the 287G agreement. Um, it's 287G agreement is a partnership, sort of a partnership between ICE. Everybody knows ICE with, this era of ICE raids and the unfortunate killings that are going on in Minnesota with the ice raids. They're happening in other places as well. So the 287G agreement is sort of a collaboration between ICE and state or local law enforcement agencies. That's sheriff's department that deputizes some limited immigration uh, functions to them. So it allows local police to uh, initiate removals of individuals that have been charged with crimes, foreign-born individuals charged with crimes who are being held in their local jails, right? So, of course, normally you hear a lot of talking heads who do, when they're doing the rounds, they do say it that they point out that um, immigration is is a civil issue. It's not a criminal issue, right? And of course, when someone is in a local jail charged with a crime, it becomes bizarre that they're conflating, first of all, a function that's not a local matter because immigration is also a federal matter. But 287G, bizarrely, it was created, was it in 1996 under, DHS? It's within the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. And it was specifically to address illegal immigration, right? And of course, immigration has, it's that elephant in the room. Um, and, some people, it has a lot of its positives, and some people view it as an albatross that America has is yet to deal with. But of course, it's very contentious now, again, with the killings. So I've been discussing, our laws, and I wanted to point out the 14th Amendment. And especially from my experience, I've talked about how I've been, I was raided in my home as well. Sometimes I've often wondered that, okay, was it what was it ice, was it because I was locked in my home. I didn't see who locked me inside, but I knew there was some kind of operation. And as my friend said, there was this huge force that came around, and this is still ongoing. But the thing is, the state of Maryland prosecuting false charges against me. They've hidden evidence. They don't want to show evidence. And I'm an American citizen, right? I'm an American citizen and I'm naturalized. One of the things they did was they stole my certificate of naturalization, my US passport ID, my social security card. So apart from other things that they took, cash, so it was a robbery under color of law. But they may have used my certificate of naturalization to try and prove to themselves that, well, that I fit the description of persons that are identified and can be apprehended under section 287G, right? Which if we remember, Kilmer Abrego Garcia, I guess that's what he was arrested under, right? He was profiled while he was ostensibly loitering. So certain states have agreements with that 287Gs at a memorandum of understanding. So Maryland is one of them. The Kilmer Abrego Garcia case, of course, his arrest happened in Maryland. You know, he was arrested for something trivial, supposedly loitering. Then from there, they processed him from immigration removal and they deported him wrongly, wrongfully to El Salvador. And of course, the DHS, the government, federal government admitted that it was an administrative error and they sent him back. So they deputized these immigration function removal to local sheriffs, people who are not trained for it. Under the 287G agreement, they get a 4 week training, right? That's local cops, sheriffs, local law enforcement, local police, right? Whose job is to catch criminals in their communities, in their counties. So they give them limited immigration training, right? For this deputizing, to initiate the process of removal, right? And of course, it has issues. The issues it raises, red flags, including matters of racial profiling, uh, 14th Amendment violations, Title VII discrimination violations, uh, violations regarding disparate treatment, pattern or practice discrimination, right? All of which are prohibited by the 14th Amendment, equal protection of the laws, right? So I'm going to discuss that, but I've talked about how I was wrongfully arrested, raided in my home, never given notice. The police who then shot me in the head, assaulted me, now claimed that I assaulted them. So that's the false charges they filed. And that's what's held me for 3 years. So I was actually detained, arrested, locked up for 15 months. The judges done all sorts of stuff. They tried to coerce me to accept a plea bargain. One of the bizarre things that they recently the states tried to have me accept is that they'll drop the charges if I go back to Nigeria and never come back. And if I ever come back to America, they'll raise the charges again. They'll bring back the charges. First of all, under our laws, charges, you can't just file charges against someone in perpetuity, especially these are even misdemeanor charges, not something serious. So the statute of limitations, it violates the Sixth Amendment rights to a due process, speedy trial, right? So already that's been violated because it's 3 years now. And I'm going to do another video. Yesterday I went to court. Yesterday was supposed to be trial. They postponed it again, my trial dates all the way to August of 2026. So it will be over 3 years now before it gets to trial. But I have another video in which I'm going to discuss that. Right? Today, I just want to talk about 287G. So I was wrongfully arrested. So I ended up in being detained without trial. I haven't been arrested, but they've trumped up charges. The charges are false, right? That's why they've been delaying. The prosecutor, if they have a case against you, they take it to trial quickly, right? Because it's taxpayer money. They're wasting resources if it's taking such a long time to get to trial. So, but while I was wrongfully detained at Montgomery County Detention Center, it's a correctional facility, I noticed when, because I was arrested 3 different times on this same case, right? The cases piled up. The same incident, they started piling on cases to intimidate me, to harass me. So that's like harassment by the state attorney, trying to coerce me to accept a plea bargain. And I said, I'm not going to do that. Let's go to trial. You either dismiss this trumped up malicious prosecution that has no merit, or let's go to trial, right? Meanwhile, they've been, I have other videos talking about how they fabricated evidence, false witnesses, and, destroying exculpatory evidence, which is a violation of what's called the Brady Rule, right? The state knows I'm innocent, the charges are baseless, but they're hiding it and ignoring it. So it's actually a violation. It can get the state attorneys disbarred, right, for malpractice. That's malpractice, right? Attorney misconduct, right? They can be disciplined, and they could even go to jail for it, right? If it's proven that it was intentional and malicious, not just an error. So while at Montgomery County Correctional Facility, I noticed when the first time I was arrested, there was by far more blacks. Montgomery County is a predominantly white community, right? But in the jail, there are more blacks, right? 80%, right, of people in jail when I was there the first time in 2023, based on this same thing. But by the time I was arrested again, roughly by 2025, there were far more. It looked like the Spanish and the black people were now equal. It was like they were arresting Spanish people in waves, right? Waves. And so I started investigating them. I now recollect, I did an earlier video saying that I misstated the numbers of Spanish and black uh, cellmates I've had. I've had 4 black cellmates and 5 um, Spanish cellmates. So of course I interview them. I get details from them, how they got arrested, what was going on, and so I understood. Again, I'm a writer, so I've done investigative journalism, and so I write. I started my own magazine. This is an opportunity for me to revive it. I have a lot of material stuff to write on, but and people told me their stories, right? Um, you know, and so of course they were. So when I was the first time I was arrested, they did something illegal. They took my buccal swab, right? Because they filed false charges of a felony. If they've charged with a felony assault, they can take your buccal swab and stuff like that and send it to the FBI. So they did something illegal. They filed fake felony charges that never occurred. They knew it never occurred. So just they could get and then do my fingerprinting. If you have a felony, they do your fingerprinting. If it's just misdemeanor, they don't do any of that. So they did all of these illegal things. They were taking they were making me taking urine samples from me, right? So all of these things are illegal, right? But they did it anyway, and so I'm a lawyer. I get to sue them later on. That's no trouble. I'm still observing. So if they're doing it to me that I'm a lawyer, they know I'm a lawyer. What is it that they do to, you know, jail's got a lot of high school students, kids, that don't know anything. They don't know their left from their right. But, and immigrants, right? Immigrants who, uh, indigent, what do they do to them? Obviously, they abuse them. So 287G allows, the local law enforcement and sheriffs to initiate removals of foreign-born individuals charged with crimes, right, in their local jails. Charged, not convicted. So it violates that principle that we have in America. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. No wonder, a psychologist, they wanted to coerce me into this or do an evaluation or take medication. And they were doing it. They filed charges on against somebody in Maryland. In Maryland, they have this terrible practice that's a violation of the people's constitutional rights. They came to tell me, and I said, no. They did it to my cellmate, a black guy, indigent guy. They charged him with a crime, was for trespassing, and they they force him to talk to they force you to talk to a psychologist in jail, and then they tell you if you take medication, right, the psychologist maybe they diagnosed him with something that he never had. They discover all of a sudden from an arrest that you have some mental illness. If you see my charge statement says that that they that I demonstrate that I present an undiagnosed thought disorder, right? Undiagnosed. The police had gaslighted me. Never mind what they had done, assuming they hadn't. But the police are not psychiatrists. The cop, Demarcus Coleman, if you see the way he one day I'm going to do a video just reading the whole charge statement, how he wrote like like an illiterate, semi-literate. I guess if you can read and write, is it? Means you're literate, but he was like a semi-literate, right? Um, you can see he was intellectually challenged. I mean, and you can see so immigration, something as complex as immigration, they're now deputizing local cops that people who work for the federal government. There's a certain level of intelligence that you have, requisite intelligence to work in the federal government. I think that's the case because I work for the federal government. Normally, many people will take an exam at least to qualify. In the competitive civil service, I had to take an exam. I came in originally through something else, but I've been able to join through the two sides: the competitive service where you have to take a competitive exam, and the non-competitive as a John S. McCain Strategic Defense Fellow, where I was just appointed to be a future senior leader. I got into a senior leadership development program to be a future senior leader of the Department of Defense, right? So of the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon. So I got out. That's a reason why I felt honored to do it, and I'm honored to have been selected. And so, regardless of what I'm going through, I still love America because hey, what is it? So I'm experiencing police abuse, police brutality. There's police brutality in Nigeria. In fact, I'm going to talk about a reason why I have this low opinion of cops, and but it's also based on facts. Cops killed my childhood friend, somebody I knew from six. They killed him when he was a teenager, and they fabricated what happened. They murdered him. I'll give the story. Um, something as complex as immigration, the 237G is delegating local enforcement again. That many are intellectually challenged. At least Demarcus Coleman, who filed this perjury charge statement saying, "I present as having an undiagnosed thought disorder." Right. This was something I saw they did to a cellmate I had. This guy was charged with trespassing. They make him talk to a psychologist in jail. He's stunned that, okay, and they now want to force him to take medication. They coerce him, they put you under duress. If you take medication, they'll release you, they'll dismiss the charge, right? Okay. And he's being held in jail, this dude. He's never been to jail, he's being held in jail. Then he's calling his family. His family is calling the jail, saying, "No, this guy doesn't have a mental illness. He's not a kid. He's like almost 30. He's 28. How can you say that you diagnosed him with a mental illness all of a sudden?" But the indigent black families, they coerce you. They tell you how they'll give you benefits. They'll give you free housing. And many black men, I saw this was the case. They get tired. They just wear away your defenses, especially the psychologists, the social workers. They have all these people in jail. They come and talk to you and coerce you. They inveigle you, and they end up, taking the medication just to get out and get the case dropped, right? Um, in fact, Maryland, when Jide Wari, the man who filed the impersonator impersonating himself as my uncle, who filed a perjured emergency evaluation petition, which ostensibly brought the police to my home. They never gave me notice, and they felt because a petition existed, they had the right to gaslight me, right? To gaslight me. So it was a hoax, it was a swatting, right? Because that was a fabricated petition. There was no, it was a work of invention by G.D. Sorry, a work of fiction by G.D. Wari, right? Um, so this guy, this dude, uh, my my former cellmate, he was now prevented. He was inveigled. He was just coerced. He called his family. His family came, tried to tell them that no, this guy doesn't have a mental illness. But eventually he did. He just started taking it, and I was like, why is he taking? Because when I noticed he would just be taking medication every time they brought it to him. Because they would bring it to him in jail. He'd take medication. So I asked him if he was ill because I didn't know he was a calm, gentle guy. I hadn't noticed anything in him. Then he told me what happened. And he gave me his whole details. He showed me. He said, and they're doing illegal things in Montgomery County, Maryland. Very illegal things just to sell medication and to fill up their jails. Because the jails are businesses for them, right? So they're doing all these illegal things. He said he just got tired, that he just complies because he just wants them to leave him alone. So he takes medication even though he knows it's not ill. He says it's not ill. His family called the jail, came and told him, no, this guy had never been diagnosed with an illness. Why? But they just, they're indigent and he just wanted to their son back home. So this is what goes on a lot in Montgomery County, and you can imagine. Oh, but today I want to talk about the 287G thing, and it deals with immigration. Immigration is something that's so complex that something I found out about America. It's part of law. There's immigration law, because somebody's an attorney, law is so vast and wide. It encompasses so much and it keeps evolving, right? Especially common law. I think common law is more complicated than civil law. Civil codes, that it's just a rule, it's a statute, it's a regulation. You understand it, that's it. This is what it says. Our law has, we have what's called, it evolves because we have a constitution, right? Things that are written down. And then also there's an idea, there are principles behind our laws. That's common law. And then common law now uh, it invokes it precipitates, or it filters, it flows into what's called judge made law, case precedent, cases, right? What the judges say in court, right? The opinions of the judge. America, okay, our common law system deals with, it's uh, the judges don't, although they don't have, that's Title 3, Article 3 judges, right? Our judicial system, it's not advisory, right? It's not built for that. Oh well, we're just going to sit down and figure this out and be an advisory. We'll figure things out. We'll create rules, based on just deliberation, right? A deliberative process to just meetings, to because we're trying to find a solution to things. No, that's not how our case law works. Case law, um, they deal with, and of course that's where Marbury versus Madison. Done a video talking about that case before. That's where it comes up, and that the role of, yes, there's judicial review. It comes up with judicial review, but it also talks about the role of courts, about how it deals with cases and controversies. But that means there's a dispute, there's an active dispute between parties, two people. There's a controversy, and that's what a judge is solving. And then whatever normally his opinion, he might create a rule, and it becomes stare decisis. It becomes a precedent, and it becomes stare decisis. As a tutor in Oxford told me that the actual pronunciation should be stare dikikis, or whatever, stare dikiki or dikikis, but in America we call it stare decisis. That means like legal precedent. So um, so lawyers, again, law is very complex, especially American law is very complex. All 50 states have their different laws, different constitutions, right? And then we have federal government, the federal United States government. We have the Constitution of the United States government, the 1787, right? And then, agencies, departments in the US, they have delegated power. They create laws as well. So this 287G that I'm talking about, it's part of, DHS, right? It's like it's I guess it's, well, Congress created it for them, because I've actually seen I think it's part of 8 USC section. I can't remember precisely. Is it 1387 G? I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. I will correct that if I'm wrong. But 287 G is what it's called. The nomenclature goes by 287G agreement. So lawyers, attorneys who practice, those who practice law, they don't know it all. So if somebody's practicing corporate law, he don't expect that he knows immigration law. If somebody practices criminal defense law, right? And so when somebody is in jail, he has a right to an attorney. It's his criminal defense. His criminal defense lawyer that's representing him knows nothing, zero about immigration law, right? He doesn't know anything about immigration law, right? Nobody, not a judge who deals with corporate law or criminal defense or civil law that's dealing with real estate rent and rental property and things like that. They don't know anything about immigration law. So immigration law, it's people, immigration lawyers who specialize in that. They're the ones who know about immigration law, right? So you can imagine if lawyers don't know, they're clueless, judges don't know, unless they're an immigration judge, an immigration attorney. How is it that the government is going to delegate such a complex realm, right? That still has to respect our constitution. Yeah, because remember, our constitution, the 14th Amendment says that that equal protection is not just to U.S. citizens, due process of law. Any person within U.S. jurisdiction, even non-citizens, illegal aliens, undocumented persons, they still have due process of law. So when somebody is charged with a crime, they're being held in the jail, they're still entitled to due process of the law. They're entitled to their day in court because it's consistent with our values, American values, our laws, our constitution, our system, our legal system, everything, our institutions, they cohere with our system, with our beliefs and our values. Our values, the legal principle of innocent until proven guilty, right? It doesn't change because we want to enforce immigration, no, right? So it says an illegal alien who's being held in jail for a crime, he's still innocent until proven guilty, and he should have his due process of law. That means he has a right to be heard. He gets his day in court, right to be heard. Not he still gets. We still operate under natural justice. That's a right to be heard, a right to hear my side before you can convict me. We don't have bill of attaiндers. They're banned. They're prohibited in America. And if you just bill of attainder means you're convicted of a crime without a trial. That's a bill of attainder. It's expressly prohibited in the U.S. Constitution, right? So when they just so these things are having the effect of a bill of attainder. The way that they charge somebody with a crime and they assume he's guilty and they just remove him and deport him, right? No, 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 no. That it doesn't. It desecrates American values and they still have rights. So imagine how complex the immigration law is, and then they deputize this to police, local law enforcement, local police. By the way, local police are not, again, I talked about what this Demarcus Coleman wrote in my charge statement, the fabrication. I mean, first of all, it can't even be read. It's not coherent. It's incomprehensible. You have to be figuring out what he's writing, right? Because this person is intellectually challenged. Yes, and it's consistent, right? It's a consistent pattern. There was one of the officers who wrote erratic, that somebody is erratic. An officer that you delegate psychiatric powers to, right? A police officer, make sure they can at least spell erratic, right? She wrote ERRADIC, erratic, right? I don't know. But yeah, but again, immigration is complex. The immigration law is very complex, and they don't pick cops from the cream of the crop, right? They're not selected from the cream of the crop. They are actually called from the flotsam and jetsam. That's basically what cops are. Flotsam and jetsam. They scrape the bottom of the barrel. When I did criminal procedure in law school, a police captain came to talk to us. Our professor got a police captain to come and talk to us, and he said it. Look, it's the minimal standard they use to hire people. They don't hire the best. If you walk in, basically, they're taking you. I worked forensic files, and I saw instances of people who were charged with crimes, and they went to go. They were actually wanted, and they went into the police stations that had a they had a wanted uh, notice on them. They were criminals at large. They were applying to be cops in those very stations, right? So again, they're the flotsam and jetsam. They're not cream of the crop. And I know when I talk about, apart from my personal experience, there's a very traumatic experience. It's an outrageous experience regarding cops. When I was a kid, a childhood friend of mine, when he was a teenager, he came from one of the wealthiest families in Nigeria. In fact, his case is in the United Nations, because the United Nations reported it. They have a permanent report on the case, and his name was Bola Filaka. So you can Google it. You find it in the United Nations report on human rights abuses, police brutality. This guy, he was shot. He was shot in his car, in his mother's car, brand new car. And while he was out with his friends by the police, they shot him, killed him, murdered him. And then he wasn't yet dead. He was still alive, sprayed him with bullets. And then they took him and his friends, somebody managed to escape. And they went to lock them up in jail, handcuffed him instead of giving him medical attention, handcuffed him in jail. His mother was looking for him, right, because he hadn't returned home. And while he was, while he she was in station filing a missing persons report, he heard his mother's voice, right? And in the cell, that's my mom. It was like, okay, he was happy that his mom, but they were injured. They were trying to shout for the mother, but she couldn't hear them, and she left. Eventually, he died, and then the police said, oh, they found her car. She came back, and in the trunk, the police had dumped his carcass, his dead body, in the trunk for them. They murdered him, and then they spread false information. They fabricated what happened. They made it seem like this guy had committed a crime. On that night, if my friends, fortunately, my friends were present at their original police encounter, right? They had been stopped at a checkpoint. My best friend came to meet me. That night, he knocked on my door telling me, hey, that I remember my mom remembered. He said, look, I need to warn my friend Bola to learn to kiss, to kiss ass. That was his phrase. Learn to kiss the ass of police, otherwise they'll kill you in this country. My best friend, my childhood best friend, had schooled in England, right? All since he was 7, so he had this weird British accent. So he told me what happened, the encounter, that they had been stopped at a checkpoint. He had his car, and in his car, Bola's younger sister was in the car, and then Bola was in another car with friends as well, right? So they stopped them at a checkpoint. The routine when you're stopped at a police checkpoint in Lagos, Nigeria, is to bribe not bribe, but yes, that's what it is, a bribe. You're forced to give them. It's called a gunje. You're forced to give them money. You give them money, they let you go. That's what they're really trying to get. So this guy, he was idealistic. He was a teen. He was idealistic. He gave instead, they pretend that they're checking your papers. His papers were in order, so they checked his papers. And but then they opened up and asked him for a bribe, for just to give them money, and he said no. He was silent, he refused to give them, and then they started cursing him out that well, and they promised they were going to deal with him. That's the term they use in Nigeria. They'll deal with you. That means they're going to kill you. So my best friend told me he was prostrating, he was one begging the police to go easy on them. So they let them go. But my friend came home. When they departed, went their separate ways. My friend came before he went with Bola's sister. They came to my house that night that I should tell my childhood friend that look, he needs to learn to just kiss police board, otherwise they'll kill you. They can kill you. Those were his words. 24 hours later, nobody could find Bola. These police, on his way back, they murdered him. The police murdered him, went to go and lock him up in jail, and then lied. So police are, from Nigeria. It's not just America. What happened to me, So it's traumatizing for my mom because the day they came to tell us, because my mom knew him. My mom and his mom were friends. We were family friends. Mom and his mom were friends. That's how we knew each other, and it was traumatizing. The day they came to tell us that he had been murdered by police, and then he lied. It was such a gruesome death because he was a kid. He was a teenager. He was a he looked like a and he was a gentle guy. He wasn't a big guy. He was a skinny, gentle guy. Everybody loved him. It was there are few people that everybody likes, right? Those people that everybody. He was just one of those guys. Nobody had a bad thing to say about him. It's unfortunate that those people die young. I mean, may his soul rest in peace. So, yes, there's police brutality in Nigeria as well. So it's traumatizing for my mother right now that while lived to middle age, so they were very protective, knowing that my friend had just been murdered. I've been I lived a very cautious life. Since then, this happened when I was a teen in Nigeria. So my friends know before just a few days no after this thing happened, another childhood friend told me, because people know me, I'm very risk averse. I'm not violent. I don't get into confrontations with cops. There's a reason I don't drive. It's to avoid racist cops. I don't want to have anything to do with them. And then they came to raid me in my home. So they're not the best people. They're not the cream of the crop. They're the flotsam and jetsam. And they're giving them these immigration powers. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. But let me get into the law that they're violating. Um, so you see, the 14th Amendment, right, which defines citizenship. And I have to be clear, even though it defines citizenship, most people because of the historical things that historical events that led to the creation of the drafting and ratification of the 14th Amendment. We know it had to do with slavery, the end of slavery, and the status of African Americans. And most people, as the president likes to misstate, he misstates when he's saying that, well, the 14th Amendment is specifically just for African Americans and children. No, that's not how it is. Their situation was the historical reason it came up. So our founding fathers and our legislators, ever since, the way they create the Constitution is to make it universally applicable and not to just be specific. So they wouldn't say, you see, they don't use the word that, well, African Americans are now citizens. No. It's talking about people who were born here, that they're United States citizens, those who naturalize and things like that. So it makes it, yes, their situation was the historical reason why Congress had to go and deliberate. But when they now create the laws, they make it universally applicable. So anybody, so it's not just very narrow. So that's one. The other thing is we notice naturalized citizens. Naturalized citizens are foreign born, and the 14th Amendment made them equal, right? That's natural born. That's the person born in America, the person who got a citizenship by just being born in America, and the person who got a citizenship by naturalizing, meaning they're foreign born. They're equal, right? And their protections to that citizenship. And, that's where you have the due process of law. Nobody, that the state cannot take away the life, liberty, or property, of any person without the due process of law. And you notice it says of any person. So it's the courts through case law, they've established that applies not just to citizens but also non-citizens, right? And then there's equal protection of law, that nor shall any person within its jurisdiction be denied of the equal protection of the laws, right? So again, that's applicable to non-citizens as well. So when you have a law, you have a law which police officers who don't understand anything about immigration law, because again, immigration law is very complex. Even attorneys, corporate attorney is difficult. Intellectual property law attorney, They don't know anything about immigration law, right? How can you, when you delegate that responsibility to a cop, right? And you're saying that, well, foreign born individuals charged with crimes. We know from my experience, I know police officers, they charge you with a crime without probable cause. They make up crimes, right? My experience, they can entrap you, gaslight you, right? They could just file false charges. That's my case. Police filed false charges. They induced me. They gaslighted me. Did engaged in criminal activity, gaslighting me, placing me under false imprisonment, spreading disinformation, right? Did a hoax, they did something illegal. That was illegal government action. Okay, let me take away from my situation, but think about other people. Many other people have been charged with crimes they haven't committed. And even under the law, even if you did, it's still the burden of proof of the state that you still have to, that you get your day in court, and then the state has the burden of proving to a jury, you're entitled to a jury trial if it's a serious crime, right? And to for that the the state has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt that the charged person, the defendant, committed the crime. The fact that you've been charged with a crime does not mean you're really an offender. Or you've been, you're convicted, and which is very offensive, because when they detain you, they now start using the term offender in jail. Once you've been processed, they start calling you an offender. You're not an offender because it's an accusation. It's just an allegation, right? And so the like, well, from my experience, I guess these are things that as an American citizen, I may now start to advocate uh, about, and write Congress about. I'm busy. There are things I'm interested in, but if you don't get interested in our laws, people will. Make laws to abuse you. We have to be very careful. This is my experience. This is what I'm seeing. So this 237G says that um, it allows the removals of foreign born individuals charged with crimes. What's the problem there in that phrase? Foreign born. Naturalized citizens are foreign born. I'm foreign born, but I'm an American citizen, right? And you can't actually remove me, right? It doesn't say people who, so they need to modify that and be clear that non-US citizens, right? People, I've been noticing people have been spreading uh, misinformation or disinformation, thinking that, well, people's naturalized citizens, their citizenship can be revoked. Once you get your citizenship, it is no longer a privilege. The process of application, it's a privilege, but once you get it, it's a right. No one can take a right from you without you willingly revoking it, renouncing it. You don't want it. And the government doesn't have the power to revoke citizenship unless, right, it made an error, right? Very egregious. It's something serious, not just administrative, blah, blah, blah. You have to qualify because it's, in the first place to get to that level, to get to that stage, like the something material, right? For instance, the person obtained it by fraud, and that fraud is, for instance, they're not who they said they were. There are rare instances where people's citizenship was revoked. Like there's a case of a Nazi that I've seen before in forensic files. I like to watch forensic files, and there was this guy who was a Nazi, was in Romania. I watched that thing again and just discuss it. But he was a Nazi war criminal in Romania, right? And a survivor, right? A Holocaust survivor in a concentration camp he'd been in recognized him. He changed who he was. He changed his name, came to America, got to immigrate to America, had a new name. He became a priest. He became a revered priest in his community, and he became an American citizen. So he wasn't, but he had actually been a Nazi, right? I think it was it in Romania or Hungary, one of those countries. I can't remember. Um, so somebody in the community recognized him and started writing the FBI, Department of Justice, for a long time. So it was, fortunately, somehow, it took a while. Something I like about Department of Justice and FBI, again, because I've studied a lot of things. I watch forensic files a lot, right? And uh, it can be dogged. Some of them can be very, it's a lot of work that they have to do, but they're very good. They can be very, very dogged. They have some very smart people there, and they can be dogged. And so they got his fingerprints by accident, an old fingerprint from an old letter and everything, and somehow they were able to, you know, identify him, that he'd falsified, he'd changed his name, his identity. He was actually the Nazi guy. And so, and even when it gets to that, because they were going to charge him because, for being a war, um, a war crime criminal. So he got to, he self deport, he renounced his citizenship. I mean, they could take you through the process. The government gets to now take you through the process, because before they can even take your, once you're a citizen, they have to go to court with you. Take, it's a legal matter. There's a whole case, and they have to prove their case, because it's no longer just the regular immigration thing, because you're a citizen, and anybody can say it's pretextual, that the government is just using pretext because they're discriminating against you, or maybe because of a political activity. So you get to, I think you actually get to go through an Article 3 court. So they need to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The standard is now different, right? And because you have to, they can't just take your citizenship from you. So it's very rare, like you see like a Nazi war criminal, somebody's wanted for a crime, and they change, so they were not the person they said they were. When I was assaulted, shot in the head, and taken to the hospital, and I was in pain, they tased me seriously, and so I needed help. I needed to get something for the case and the pain. I don't know what they had done to me. My jaw was swollen. Was in pain, like they had beaten me up on, all that stuff. Um, One of the things that the uh, psychologists that talked to me at the hospital said was, "Hey, we don't believe you're who you say you are." It was so freaking weird. I don't care who you think I am. I didn't come to you. You guys just basically kidnapped me under color of law from my apartment. I really don't care about that. So anyway, let me go back to the issue of, being charged with a crime. So if you're charged with a crime, remember you have a Fifth Amendment right not to self-incriminate. You have a right to be silent. You don't have to say anything. So when I was processed in jail, one of the first questions they asked me, I remember it was a black woman, am I an American citizen? I didn't have to tell them that. I'd never been arrested before. It was my first time, so I was still shocked that, okay, well, what's going on? These guys. So I was complying. I'm cooperative. I was complying. I didn't. Because normally if you're arrested, you can immediately ask. I'm not going to talk to it. You can immediately affirm your right not to talk, to remain silent. I'm not going to tell you anything. I need my lawyer. Give me my lawyer. Right? You have that right to do that. But I did say, yeah, I'm an American citizen. And then she said something, you're lucky, you're safe. Don't worry, you get out of this. I didn't know what was going on. It was so it looks like somebody was trying to get me kicked out of the country. And Jide Wari and his wife, the guy who filed the false petition, his wife had threatened my mother and talked about how they were going to get me kicked out. I'm not a citizen. So I was like, don't these people know I'm an American citizen? It was a bizarre, stupid statement, because again they acted maliciously. So Jide Ware filed a fabricated emergency evaluation petition, and that was what he used to instigate the process of getting me arrested, locked up in jail, right, and all of that stuff. So so now these people, Americans, non-Americans, right? They still have rights according to the 14th Amendment. The Fifth Amendment, they have a right to be silent. They have a right to an attorney. But of course, many of these people are indigent, right? Many of the um, um, foreign-born people that are rounding up and being racially profiled, they're indigent, right? And like the case of Abrego Garcia, he's been very fortunate. for the support he's received. There are many more who don't get the support, the sort of support and media attention that he got, that end up getting deported, or they're still lounging, languishing in jail, right? They're languishing in jail. There's some are dying. While I was locked up, four people, some died by overdose because again they coerce people. My cellmates, they deceive them, they coerce them to to use medication for mental illnesses that they never knew they had, right? They take you to, they arrest you, charge you with a false crime, and then that's Montgomery County, and then they now force diagnose you with a crime, also with a mental illness, and now coerce you, inveigle you into start using medication, thinking, well, they'll go lighter on you. So there are many things that are violations of constitutional rights, and it's ironic that even though I have a law degree, when I told Judge Bonifant last week on February 2nd, 2026, at a hearing status, and I was telling him about my 14th Amendment rights, my constitutional rights, and my First Amendment rights, he actually said he said it in court. He said he doesn't believe I have these constitutional rights, even though I'm an American citizen. He knows my attorney immediately from the beginning. He told them I'm since 2023 that I'm an American citizen. They know because they stole my certificate of naturalization, my citizenship. So I think they're reading that thing, they're reading that 237G agreement that says, well, they can initiate the process of removals for foreign born individuals who are charged with crimes, not even convicted, right? It's a violation of due process of law, um, and Sixth Amendment and um, the Fifth Amendment. So many violations, and you're innocent. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, right? And it violates your right to be heard. Again, let me say the Latin, right? Audi alterum partem. You have a right to be heard, right? You have a right to be heard. Audi alterum partem. It violates that principle of natural justice. So and remember, and then for citizens, naturalized citizens, right? Naturalized citizens like me, I'm entitled to equal protection of the law. You know, um, I mentioned how the state offered me that they will only dismiss the case, or because they've been postponing and postponing and postponing, using delay of violating my Sixth Amendment rights, right, to a speedy and fair trial and a public trial. They said they will dismiss only if I agree that I'll go back to Nigeria and not come back to America. And if I come back, they'll charge me with a crime. They'll bring back the charges, even though they're bogus. I have a right to clear my name, so they're denying me. That's not what It's not a matter of going back, but they've made life unlivable for me. So they've done some other thing. I haven't been able to work since that time. I've just been very fortunate, and I don't take welfare. God forbid. I didn't come to America to take welfare. What a lot of people, they make these baseless claims about immigrants taking welfare. There's a law, right? The Welfare Reform Act of Bill Clinton. There's a law. Immigrants, and even part of immigration, they can't take welfare. They don't qualify. The government, the welfare things, the grants from the federal government that they give the states, they don't give welfare. The federal government doesn't give welfare to undocumented people or people who are not citizens. No, or not green card holders. And before you can apply for the green card, the immigration process, they make sure that you're not going to. That's one of the requirements, that you're not going to be a public charge. You're not going to take welfare, right? Those are all the patterns. You're not going to be a public charge, that you can support yourself, that whoever is sponsoring you can support you, or you're able to support, you have the resources to support yourself, right? So immigrants don't take, unless those ones who lie, right? So they're committing a crime, those ones who falsify records, or they lie that they're citizens, right? The people who lie that they're citizens when they're not, right? But somebody who's presenting themselves as uh, a non-green card holder, they're not entitled to welfare, right? The government doesn't allow it. The federal government doesn't allow it. A state can desire that, okay, that it's going to provide welfare to anybody. So it's up to the state, but the federal government does not. The federal government does not provide welfare um, to um, non-U.S. citizens or non-green card holders, and it just doesn't, right? So, and most people who actually come as immigrants, right, they have this pride, they have this sense of pride. They don't want to take welfare. Like welfare is like a stigma for them from where they come from. It's like abhorrent. Like an abomination. Like from my culture, I don't take welfare. I've never taken, and I don't look down on people who do or who have to, right? But immigrants, uh, we need to debunk the myth, that we have about immigrants coming to live on welfare. No, they don't do that in America. It's American citizens, American-born people who take welfare, not immigrants, right? In fact, immigrants, undocumented people as well, they pay tax. They support the welfare system. Immigrants pay taxes. Before I became a citizen, I was paying taxes. Many people. I know people who are not even of legal status. They pay tax because they don't want to get into trouble. That's one of the requirements, right? When you're going through the process of getting a green card and getting a citizenship, you should have been paying taxes, right? You pay taxes when you're working. So immigrants who not, undocumented workers or who don't even benefit from welfare, pay taxes into America to support American citizens who live on welfare. So know the truth, right? Know the truth. Things that they can get, right? You can get a benefit, like, and it's based on merit, right? You can get a scholarship, but that's not welfare, right? That's because you have ability, and then the school you're in, most likely you take money to, right? They see your ability, and then they say, okay, take this competitive exam. Okay, well, and then they'll support you. They could give you a scholarship, and that's because you're in school, right? Those are things that they can get, and that's not welfare, right? That's not welfare, right? They're giving you because of your talent. You earn something, right? Because you have a gift academically or something, right? But no, immigrants are not entitled. I'm not immigrants. So when I say immigrants, anybody who comes in is an immigrant who moves to a country, whether to stay or whatever. But undocumented migrants, they don't live on welfare. They can't take welfare. That's a law for at least from the federal. And illegal aliens or um, or non-green card holders, non-citizens, they can't take welfare. That's a federal law. That's part of it. So it's not new. So people keep misleading the public, and they keep talking about immigrants burdening the welfare system, burdening Americans. No, that's not true. Immigrants actually pay, they support the welfare system, and they never get, if they're unemployed, they don't get social security benefits or unemployment benefits. So they're always working, right? Um, but something else that I wanted to just quickly talk about. So that for the naturalized citizens, how I done an earlier video in which I talked about suspect classes, right? And so um, a foreign-born naturalized citizen, it raises issues of Title VII disparate treatment and suspect classifications, and so there's got to be a compelling government interest, right, to be able to have a law that's violating a member of a suspect class, and in this case, the most where they apply what's called strict scrutiny. Strict scrutiny is the most stringent standard, right? When there's a suspect class. For instance, the suspect class would be race, religion, somebody who's a member of a race, religion, uh, um, national origin, and alienage. So you see national origin because if you're foreign born, so it raises that issue of strict scrutiny. There's got to be a compelling government interest, and the law has to be narrowly tailored to achieve that compelling government interest, right? So there's that issue of, because disparate treatment, you're singling out people, and these are things that they've been taking back to the courts, right? And it's in the court. This video is now 1 hour. Let me stop it here. But yeah, 237G agreement, giving local law enforcement in Maryland, um, giving them immigration powers, right, to deputizing them as immigration enforcers is no good, right? It's just no good at all because remember, cops, they're not the cream of the crop. They're taken from the flotsam and jetsam, right? My name is Oluru Osha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.